Good morning and welcome to Mystery, Murder, and Magic. I just want to say I'm sorry that we're like a day late putting up this episode. I had like the worst migraine that I've ever had from like late Saturday night to I still don't feel great with it. The pain is gone, but like the left side of my face is still numb, and like my left eye is like real blurry, so I don't know what that's about. But anyway, here we are, and this is the 25th episode of Mystery, Murder, and Magic. And over the weekend, I looked, Alex, and we had hit right over 5,400 downloads.
That's a lot of downloads.
That's a lot of downloads,
people
yeah.
Watching those.
It's a big thrill, actually, because like every time I look and I see those numbers, I'm like, wow, you know. And honestly, when we first started doing this back in December, I didn't really think that the stats would look like this so early on.
Yes, exactly.
We really appreciate it, and I feel like the word saying thank you is not enough. But, you know, thank you.
Exactly.
And I do want to remind you that we do have a Facebook page, and we'd love to get to know y'all through it. We're very interactive with it, and sometimes we post stuff from our personal lives there too. So if you want to hang out with us there, in the search bar on Facebook, just type in the number 3, the letter M as in Mary, and the word podcast. So it's 3M podcast, and it should bring you right to our page. And right now the profile picture is a picture of me, and yeah, I do have blue hair.
Yes.
Well, Alex, this is the first time you've been with me in a while because you've been so busy.
I've been busy with the graduation stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sure they have missed you. Like,
yes,
you're the teenage heartthrob of the show.
Heartthrob, yes. That's a funny word.
So you want to tell us what you've been up to?
Well, I've been busy doing graduation stuff. Graduating too, almost 2 weeks ago now. And, I've been sick a little bit too.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Prom too.
Yeah, prom too.
So the end of senior year is just crazy busy. So
yeah.
You've been excused from our presence until now. Now you have no excuse.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I'm so very proud of like your achievements and everything that you've accomplished in your high school, well, all your school years. Especially that best dancer award you got in pre-K.
The only award you always
He got the best dancer.
I had the moves back then.
I don't know if he still has the moves. He don't dance in front of me.
I don't dance at all.
I wished I had been a fly on the wall at the prom. But I can't wait to see what else you accomplish in the upcoming years, and maybe you'll even be on like Dancing with the Stars or something.
Okay, that'd be funny. That'd be awful though.
Well, are you ready to get this episode started?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Mystery, murder, and magic, heroes, and Alright, so let's do this thing. Well, recently I watched this 3-part series on Sundance Now called Death, and it somewhat accurately told the true story of one of England's most notorious serial killers. Serial killers.
Yeah, sorry.
Serial killers.
Sorry.
This is a serial killer. His name was Dennis Nilsen. Have you ever heard of him, Alex?
Heard of who? I didn't hear the name exactly.
Dennis Nilsen.
Nilsen? No, I have not heard the name of Dennis.
Well, no worries. I'm going to tell you all about him.
Yes.
And by the time this is over, you're going to know who this sicko person Dennis was, okay? Okay. Dennis Nilsen was born on November the 23rd, 1945 in Fraserburgh, Scotland. I think I said that right. Fraserburgh, Scotland. His parents' marriage wasn't a happy one, so Dennis, his mom, and his siblings lived with his maternal grandfather after the parents split up. Dennis loved this grandfather very much, and when Dennis was just 6 years old, his grandfather unexpectedly died, and it traumatized Dennis greatly, especially like when he went to the funeral home and saw his grandfather's dead body laying there. Eventually now, Dennis's mom remarried and had 4 more kids. And Dennis said that he felt alone as a child and he became withdrawn. And somewhere during this time, he figured out that he was also homosexual. When he was 16, he joined the Army, where he became a cook. And he also served as a butcher in the Army Catering Corps. And that's where he learned skills that he would put to use during his 5-year spree as a serial killer.
A lot of serial.
Now, he left the Army in 1972, and he began training to be a policeman. And this is when he discovered that he enjoyed visits to the morgue and was fascinated with autopsied bodies.
Of course he is. That's a fetish thing.
Okay, I have to admit now, sometimes I'm like all about the autopsy and results and stuff like when I'm watching these shows, but not like to the extent this man was. And I would not mind watching an autopsy, but not for the fact that I'm like a sicko and get off on it. I just like, honestly, I believe I'm into murders and stuff so much as like the science of it and how they did this and what caused this and whatnot. You know, it's not just, oh, look, they killing people or they splitting this person open. It's not that at all. It's hard to explain. But anyway, now, although he could feed his morbid fascinations as a police officer, he soon quit that job and went to work as a recruitment interviewer. And I think that's what it meant, was that he just interviewed people that were like applying for jobs. I'm not sure. But shortly after that, Dennis had his first run-in with the cops. A man that he had met through his work said that Dennis had taken pictures of him while he was asleep. Now, what kind of freak does something like that? Let me just take pictures. You're so pretty when you sleep. I don't know. But the man was so freaked out over it, he required hospitalization for it. Like, he had to be put in the hospital. He was so freaked out.
Yeah.
The police interviewed Dennis about it, but they never pressed any charges against him. In 1975, Dennis moved in with a guy by the name of David Gallatin in an apartment on Melrose Avenue in North London. David said that the relationship wasn't homosexual, but anyway, it lasted for 2 years, and when David left, Dennis's life started its downhill roll into alcoholism. I cannot talk. Alcoholism and loneliness. He had brief sexual encounters, and that seemed to push him further into the darkness that he was falling into. And I think Alex is sitting over there like, Mom, what have you gotten me into today?
I didn't want to turn on this one.
Like, why did I want to come back for this episode?
God.
Yeah.
But
anyway, on December 29th, 1978, Dennis met a guy at a pub and then invited him over to his place, which he had done several times before. But this time he didn't want the young man to leave because the next morning he was so overcome with his desire for the guy to stay that he strangled him with a tie and then drowned him in a bucket of water.
Oh.
After he drowned the young man, he took his body into the bathroom to wash it and then placed the corpse in his bed. Later, he remarked about how beautiful the corpse looked. I mean, what the hell? I even hate it when someone's at a funeral and they're like, oh, they did a good job, or he looks so good. I can't stand when you're standing like at a funeral looking at somebody in a casket and they're like, oh, he looks so good. I mean, but this dude's bragging on his own like handiwork. He later attempted to have sex with the body, okay, but that didn't work out. So he spent the night sleeping next to it. Finally, he hid the body under his floorboards for like 7 months, and later he took out the rotting remains to his backyard and burned them.
Oh, God.
7 months under his floorboards. You know, it was stanky.
Stanky.
In October of the next year, he had another close call with the police when a young student accused him of trying to strangle him during a bondage session. Now, again, no charges were filed against him, and he was sweating bullets because he had just recently burned a body in his backyard, but I guess it didn't scare him enough because he met his next victim just 2 months later.
2 months later.
2 months later.
Dose.
This man's, I don't know. I don't know. He met a Canadian tourist by the name of Kenneth Okendon in a pub on December the 3rd, 1979. Dennis took him for a day of sightseeing and drinking, and then they ended up back at his apartment. Those feelings of abandonment popped back up, and he gave into them and strangled Kenneth with an electrical cord. Again, he cleaned up the corpse, and he spent the night with it. But this time, he went further by taking photos and having sex with the corpse before putting it under his floorboards.
Yeah.
I know,
Grody.
Grody to the max, dude. Like, gag me with a spoon. Occasionally, he would remove the corpse and have conversations with it. Yeah, so he would just get it back out of the floorboards and prop him up and, have a conversation.
Let's just sit down and have a conversation.
I mean, see, honestly, I feel like the dude does have some kind of psychological issues.
Yeah.
I mean, normal people ain't walking around doing stuff like that. But anyway. Then in May of 1980, Dennis met his third victim. This time it was a 16-year-old homeless kid by the name of Martin Duffy. On the 13th of May, Dennis invited Martin to spend the night with him, and like he did with his first victim, he strangled, then drowned him before bringing him back to the bed and performing lewd acts over his corpse. Now, I was about to say what those lewd acts were, but we're just gonna leave it right there, okay? I'm not gonna talk about that, but he kept Martin's body in a wardrobe for 2 weeks before putting him under the floorboards with Kenneth. Now, I don't know how much room he's got under these floorboards, but let's just keep stuffing bodies in there.
Exactly.
Ooh. Now, that's 2 bodies under the floorboard. Now, don't you know it was stinking like something awful in that apartment?
Grody odor.
Ugh. I mean, oh my God, I can't even imagine what that would have to be like. And the neighbors had to start smelling it too. I mean,
what's it smell?
Well, let me tell you what they say. In a few minutes, I'll tell you what the neighbors said. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Now the next victim. I don't know why we're laughing about this because there's nothing funny about this at all. But
not at all.
It's hard for me and Alex to be serious together for any amount of time.
Impossible.
The next victim was a guy by the name of Billy Sutherland, and he was a 27-year-old prostitute who had the bad luck of following Dennis home one night. He too was strangled, followed by 24-year-old Malcolm Barlow, who was an orphan with learning disabilities. By 1981, Dennis had killed 12 men. He claimed that he would go into a trance and then kill his victims. 7 times he was able to snap out of the trance, and he would set those people that would be his victims free. Now, by the time Dennis killed Malcolm Barlow, he was running out of room under his floorboards.
Oh.
He's running out of room.
What an inconvenience.
And so he had started stuffing corpses under his kitchen sink. To combat the flies that were hatching from all the dead bodies, he had to spray his apartment twice a day with lake poison.
Oh.
And finally, the neighbors did start complaining about the odor, but he convinced them, get this, he convinced them that it was coming from structural issues with the building.
God.
Structural issues don't, to my knowledge, don't normally cause odors.
They don't.
I mean,
Let's
maybe in London it does, but right here in South Carolina, I've never heard of that happening.
Exactly.
Okay, we got both snotty noses today. But anyway, he knew he needed to start getting rid of the bodies, so he took off his clothes. That's the first thing he did, was took off his clothes and began dismembering them with a huge kitchen knife right there on the kitchen floor. Sometimes he would boil the skulls to remove the skin, and he would also place organs and other tissues in garbage bags and threw them out with the rest of his trash. What he couldn't throw away, he would bury in his garden and later burn them. After burning them, he would crush the bones. Police officers found thousands of bone fragments in the garden while conducting forensic investigations. In 1982, he decided that maybe if he moved to somewhere without a garden and easily movable floorboards, he would stop killing. So he moved to a top floor apartment in another part of North England. But this didn't stop his urges, and he went on to kill 3 more victims. Those victims were identified as John Howlett, Archibald Graham Allen, and Stephen Sinclair. And since he didn't have a garden at his new address, he was presented with the problem of what to do with the bodies, but he quickly came up with a solution. He dismembered the bodies into the smallest pieces that he could and then flushed them down the toilet. And the parts that he couldn't flush were thrown out with the trash. Flushed them down the toilet. I saw on the ID channel on Homicide Hunter one time, this guy, the man that was playing the real guy, he looked so much like the Undertaker. Do you remember me telling you about this?
I think I did, yeah.
He made me think of the Undertaker. But anyway, he had killed his girlfriend and cut her up and put her in the tried to flush her down the toilet. I mean, that's just horrific. I can't imagine having the stomach to do that. I can't even clean fish after I go fishing, much less dismember a body and flush it. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, let's regroup. Let's gather ourselves. Okay.
Great.
In early February of 1983, one of the other tenants in the building that Dennis was living in called a plumber out for a blocked drain.
Oh.
In the presence of the tenants, including Dennis, the plumber found rotting human remains. The police were called in to investigate. Dennis knew that it wouldn't take long for the police to figure out who flushed the remains, so he had to act quickly. That night, he removed the remains that were causing the blockage, but a downstairs neighbor became suspicious of what he was doing. The next morning, which was February the 9th, Dennis laughingly told his coworker that if he wasn't at work the next day, that he would either be ill, dead, or in jail. And now that don't make you look guilty at all, does it?
Exactly.
That evening, when Dennis came home from work, he was met by Detective Chief Inspector Jay. Jay said that he had some questions for him in relation to the remains that had been found in the drain. When they entered Dennis's apartment, Jay was overcome with the putrid odor and asked David what it was. Not David, Dennis. His name was Dennis.
Who's this David guy?
I just threw in a new person. No, it was Dennis. And Dennis calmly confessed that what they were looking for was stored in bags around his apartment.
Oh.
Yeah. When he was arrested, Dennis provided in-depth details of his killing spree. He admitted to killing 15 young men, even though legal counsel told him not, advised him not to be doing all the confessing. Don't do that.
Don't do that now.
He even came clean about the 7 that he attempted to kill but had to let go, or he had let go. At no time during his confession or interrogation did Dennis Nilsen show up, or show. He didn't show. He didn't show.
Look.
He didn't show up. He was there, but he didn't show up. Okay, I'm gonna shut up and just tell the facts. Okay. He didn't show the least bit of remorse. He was even excited to help the police collect evidence against him, and at one point, he even took them back to that first apartment where he had been hiding all the bodies under the floorboards. But he was all excited to help them out. And while he was awaiting trial, he filled up 50 notebooks with his memories to help out the prosecution.
Of course he did.
On October 24th, 1983, the trial started. He was charged with 6 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Now, why they didn't charge him with all 15 that he confessed to, I don't know. But now the odd thing is that even though he confessed and helped the police collect evidence against him, he pled not guilty, saying that he had diminished responsibility due to mental defect. 3 men who had escaped testified against Dennis, and the prosecution used hours upon hours of notes from his interrogation. It took 4 hours to read those notes word for word. 4 hours of notes. Physical evidence included photos of the crime scene, cutting boards used to dismember the bodies, and the pot used to boil the heads, feet, and hands of his victims.
Oh. Not good there.
Makes me feel nauseous. The defense relied mostly on the testimony of 2 psychiatrists. The first described Dennis's troubled childhood, his inability to express his feelings, and the resulting not knowing right from wrong. He stated that all of that made Dennis not responsible for what he had done. However, when he was cross-examined by the prosecution, he was forced to retract his thought on diminished responsibility. The second psychiatrist diagnosed Dennis as suffering from false self syndrome, and it was characterized with outbreaks of schizoid disturbances, and because of that, he was incapable of premeditation. A third psychiatrist was called by the prosecution, and this doctor found no evidence for much of the testimony claimed by the defense's psychiatrist. He said that Dennis was manipulative, and he had showed signs of some mental abnormality, saying he did think that there was something wrong, but he was still cognizant and he was responsible for his actions. Now, on November the 3rd, the jury began deliberations but couldn't come back with a unanimous verdict. The following day, the judge agreed to accept a majority verdict, and he was announced as guilty on all 6 murder charges. The judge sentenced Dennis to life in prison without possibility of parole for at least 25 years. In 2018, Dennis died while he was in prison at the age of 72 years old.
God.
Now, in January of this year, a book based on notes that Dennis had written while he was in prison was published. The title of this book is History of a Drowning Boy. In it, Dennis admits to a whole new string of crimes that were previously unknown. Like, he just keeps...
Look what I did.
But you gotta wonder, too, if they did find, since they did find some kind of little bit of a mental defect with him, if he really actually committed all that.
Most of them, yeah.
Now, before committing his first murder, he says in the book that he sexually attacked a drunken soldier and also admitted to strangling at least 2 other victims that he hadn't talked about before. Family members of the victims are very unhappy that the book was published and called it morally wrong. I kind of can agree with them. It's like they just had to relive all that over again, and maybe even heard details that they hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
The notes that Dennis had wrote were given to a friend of his after he passed away in prison. Now, in my opinion, Dennis caused enough pain and grief while he was still alive on Earth, and it all should have been taken to the grave with him, honestly. Instead of a book being released, and these poor families having to relive the nightmares and possibly hear details that they didn't know before. And one thing I wonder is who's profiting from the book sales, though, because he's dead. I don't know if any of his family is still around. I don't know, because he was 72 when he died in 2018. So I'm pretty sure his parents or his mom's not still alive. And he never married or anything like that, so I don't know who's profiting from it.
Yeah.
But y'all, that's all I've got for this week. Like I said, I'm sorry that it's a day late. I did not mean for that to happen. But thanks for being understanding and nice. And y'all come back next week for a whole new full-length episode. I'm going to try to make sure it's not late next week. And 2 days from now, well, not 2 days from now, but on Wednesday of this week, which will be tomorrow for after this goes on air. Don't forget that we have the weekend or the midweek minis on Wednesday and the weekend weird files on Saturdays. But thanks for listening in.